China has been very aggressive in its posturing in recent past. From threatening its neighbors, to rejecting the decision of Hague Tribunal on South China Sea dispute, its behavior has been outright provocative. To know what China is doing in South China Sea in details, please refer to the video on above card. Before we start on how China can be stopped, we need to understand how China's strategy works. China's strategy is specifically molded keeping in mind that her current disputes are with nations, which are much smaller than her. Chinese strategy can be summarized in 4 points, which are as follows. 1. China seeks to change the territorial status quo gradually, island by island instead of trying to capture in one go. This helps in keeping the conflicts short and local. Example, China first occupied the Paracel Islands in 1974, and then slowly expanded its presence southward by attacking Vietnam's islands in the Spratly chain in the 1980s. 2. China's strategy relies on low-intensity but constant and simultaneous small provocations at multiple pressure points. This served to stretch thin the capabilities of smaller nations like Vietnam to respond, while limiting the risk of escalation to a manageable level. 3. Chinese strategy is heavily dependent on the non-lethal use of military coercion, which aims to incrementally fortify its positions on the disputed areas. Example, future actions in this category would include declaring an air defense identification zone in SCS region, or deploying surface-to-air missiles in the Spratly Islands. 4. China emphasizes the bilateral nature of disputes, to avoid intervention by external powers such as the United States and Japan on the side of weaker claimants. This strategy, known as salami slicing, involves slow accumulation of small changes, none of which in isolation amounts to much, but which add up over time to a substantial change in the strategic picture. It is incremental divide and conquer process. To counter China's salami slicing, a cohesive response is needed. The response should have following components. 1. Carry out joint military drills in different regions including in South China Sea. The drills should involve Malaysia, Vietnam, Brunei, Taiwan, Indonesia, the Philippines, United States, Japan, India, and Australia. This will be most effective show of unity and will act as deterrence. A naval exercise of such nature is already in place with United States, Japan and India as permanent partners, its exercise Malabar. Despite the statement by a top US Navy officer that Malabar was not directly aimed at China, there is very little doubt about who is the target. The exercise is conducted only about 400 kilometers from the contested Senkaku Islands. Scenarios include hunting for Chinese submarines, ships and countering hostile Chinese Navy. This trilateral naval exercise should be expanded to include other involved nations. Also, these nations should agree in principle to share military logistics like airstrips. This will enable the creation of a combined front against China. 2. US, Japan and India should sell lethal weapons to Taiwan, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The selection of the weapons should be such that it directly counters the Chinese military resources. Example, Chinese Navy has large number of surface ships as well as submarines. To counter this, US could sell, or allow lease of P-8 Poseidon, to nations like Vietnam and the Philippines. P-8 can conduct anti-submarine warfare and anti-surface warfare. Talks are already underway between India and Vietnam for Indo-Russian-made BRAHMOS missile. This deal should be finalized by India, as it will provide a major boost to Vietnam's anti-ship capabilities. Chinese Navy has no answer to this one-of-a-kind supersonic cruise missile, and this will go a long way in deterring the Chinese Navy. Japan on its part should sell the XASM-3 anti-ship missiles. This missile being cost-effective can be deployed in bulk and can be used to inflict heavy damages on Chinese surface ships. 3. targeted economic sanctions in response to China's land reclamation. For instance, instead of imposing sweeping economic sanctions on China, sanctions should be imposed on involved companies, such as the China Communications Construction Company dredging firm. 4. Last but not the least, response should be carried out immediately after a Chinese escalatory action to show that there is equal and opposing action to every misbehavior. Immediate action also negates any potential benefits that China could reap from its action. Example was the sending of two B-52s to contest China's announcement of an air defense identification zone over the East China Sea in 2013. China has taken some major steps in disputed South China Sea region. Watch this video to know in details of the impacts.